Good afternoon. We're here with Emily and Molly. I'll allow them to introduce themselves, but we're here today to share with you about traditions and celebrations and what that looks like in community and how we take that and transfer it to our homes so that we as a community, as directors and as teachers and parents can use these traditions and celebrations as a building block for our communities to draw us together in unity. So I'll first go ahead and let Emily introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a homeschool mom now this is my 8th year homeschooling. We have 4 children and a high school stepdaughter who I've homeschooled, all of them. I started my stepdaughter in 4th grade. And this last year, with all the craziness going on, I decided to walk alongside some people who were starting homeschooling for the first time and started a Scholé group called Stillwater Scholé for pre-K through 6th grade students.
And Molly.
So my name's Molly, and I have been homeschooling for 16, 17 years. I have 7 kids, and we've been homeschooling all the way along. This is our first year. I'm part of the board of a new Scholé group called Petra Scholé, and we have been a community, though. Our group has been a community under another name for many, many years. So we have this group of families that have been together for a long time. So some of our traditions are new. Some of them we've brought along from other times. And so we're just figuring out this Petra or this Scholé group thing this year too, and really loving it. So.
Well, great. Thank you both so much for being here. And I am Lisa Mayeux. I'm the director of Sanctus Spiritus Scholé, and we have had our group for, I guess, about 5 years now. And I've been homeschooling for, about 16 or so. So it's been a fun journey, and it changes all the time. But Scholé, as Molly was saying, is a hard thing sometimes to wrap our brains around and to incorporate into our community because there's still rigor, correct? And so traditions and celebrations help to ground us and bring us to remembrance of what Scholé is. And so we just wanted to share with you today some ideas that might be helpful for you to incorporate into your communities. And so in tradition, I'm going to share a couple of quotes with you about tradition. One is from 2 Thessalonians 2:15. So then, brethren, stand firm and hold to the traditions which you were taught by us, either by word of mouth or by letter. And from Corinthians, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. I praise you for remembering me in everything and holding to the traditions just as I pass them on to you. And one from Modern, this is from Wendell Berry, from Hannah Coulter, says, you mustn't wish for another life. You mustn't want to be somebody else. What you must do is this. Rejoice evermore. Pray without ceasing. In everything, give thanks. I am not all the way capable of so much, but those are the right instructions. So we can do that with our communities, and not that we always have to do it right, but we can do the right thing, right? And teach the tradition and teach the remembrance for them to pass on. So what to you can each kind of take a turn. I'm going to give you some questions and touch on them how you'd like, but we'd like to talk about what is tradition and why it's important. And what are examples of tradition and celebration in your communities? And how do you model this?
I'll go. So I think tradition is anything that you do on a repetitive basis that kind of builds memories, right? And so we can build traditions that are kind of by happenstance or intentional, right? And so I think what we have done as a community this year is we've tried to be really intentional about the things that we want to build into our community, because we're starting new and fresh, and we have this idea of Scholé and trying to figure that out together. So we were kind of starting from scratch, and one of the things that we have done that is, I think, going to be a lasting tradition that really helps to keep us grounded in what's important is our opening time and how we do that. And so we decided to kind of structure it around the virtues and vices. So each month or every 6 weeks or so, we focus on one virtue and one vice. And in the morning session, we developed a catechism of just about 5 question and answers. And then a couple of those questions change with each virtue and vice to kind of bring out what is really important about those things. And then we have a story read, or a passage from scripture, or a fable, or something that relates to those 2 things. And then we sing a hymn, and we sing that hymn for that whole period of time. So we learn one hymn at a time for 4, 5, 6 weeks. So the hope is building up. Number one, a lot of people haven't necessarily sung hymns a lot. And so trying to build that vocabulary, build the love for that kind of music, and just have a really Scholé opening to our day instead of a frantic opening to our day. So it has really been a wonderful thing, because we've never done anything like it before. So
just incorporating that liturgy and starting and setting the tone for the day makes a big difference. And I love that you do hymns. That it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And my daughter, we do hymns as well. And she was sitting at her desk, and I don't think she noticed that she was doing it. And she's singing while she's doing her math, hymns, the hymns from kind of like a morning time type of thing, right?
Yeah.
You do it all together, correct?
Yes, so we do it, the whole community. Our community is pre-K to 12. So it's, we've got, 70 kids maybe.
Wow.
And awesome. It's been really wonderful to build the community across the age groups too in that time, that everybody's together and each class gets up and leads part of it. So the kids are involved. They read the catechism, they lead the hymn. The kids have been bringing their instruments and doing part of the music, so it's become a really celebratory community time where everybody's involved. So it's been great.
That's wonderful. And do they, how do they take that home? How do they practice that at home? Or how do we hope that they would practice that at home?
Right. I can give you an example from what I do. So I take that home to my morning time with my kids, where we sing the hymn and we do the catechism at home, so that they're getting that reinforced. It's not just a once a week, it's throughout the week. And then the virtues and vices are just kind of the groundwork for, if you see, oh, I see that virtue in you today, or I see that this is something that we need to work on, or, it's kind of a reminder of what can we be developing in our spiritual lives and in our character, so, and stay focused on it for 5 weeks. We're one thing,
Yes, that's beautiful. So, because we have so many distractions. And so if we can teach them how to focus in on the one needful thing at a time, that's valuable. That's beautiful. I love that, Molly. That's wonderful.
We do something pretty similar in terms of our daily liturgy or weekly liturgy, except we're on Zoom. I have about 25 students all over the country, many of them local to us in Massachusetts. We have about 4 families that, are not local. But so trying to figure out how to establish a liturgy on the internet has been interesting. But I basically took very similar to what you're doing, what we had been doing as a family for our morning time, and just transferring it to a larger audience. So one of the things I've done to try to establish like this entering a special space, even though it's on the computer, is when the children arrive, I play a piece of music. We also learn one hymn per 6 weeks. So I usually have some version of that hymn playing with some type of like a question or a quote an image that we're going to discuss when everyone signs on. And then through that time, we talk about that, and then we have usually a prayer that we are working on for the whole term. We've done Scholar's Prayer by Aquinas at the beginning of the year. And we did Johnny Appleseed's prayer. I have older and younger kids. We're pre-K through 6. So I wanted the Thomas Aquinas one was great for my older kids. My little kids were like, what?
But share that Johnny Appleseed, because that I'm sure a lot of people would love to see that.
Yeah, it was cute. So we did that, and so we do a prayer together, and then I break down our morning, which is about an hour and 15 minutes on Zoom. We do truth, goodness, and beauty. And so truth, we're looking at a Bible passage and talking about that. We're usually learning a song to help us memorize that Bible passage. We do some catechism, preset catechism things. And then during our goodness section, we also learn one virtue for every 6 weeks. So we go over what the definition of that virtue is, and then I usually have some type of little vignette or story that I share to model that. And then for beauty, we rotate through either, we learn about one poet per term, one composer, and one artist per term. And so I use that beauty time to discuss either a poem or a piece of artwork or a piece of music that we're learning about. And then we also have time for presentation. So each of the children has a 1 to 2 minute show and tell type of thing where we are working on skills, even though we're on Zoom, how to present well and look at the camera. And then we end with some memory work time. And then I read aloud from a chapter book. And we read Miss Dioshinetig, our first term. And it took us 2 terms because I'm reading like a chapter. Right. Session. And then at the very end, I found the 1960s version of that book movie, and we had a virtual movie showing of the movie. So that was a fun way to celebrate at the end of our term. But that's kind of how our weekly liturgy looks on Zoom. And then the hope is that it's modeling that for the parents, and then they can see kind of what that looks like and then incorporate it into their homes. And we have an online platform called Schoology where I post, all of our work for the week and resources and suggestions, but we also share photos and inspire one another on that space. And so it's been neat to see the ways that parents are really incorporating those things in their home and then making it their own, which is what we want them to do, because we're all unique. So what works exactly for me isn't going to work for all of my families exactly. So I just love the beauty of God's tapestry of how we can take this tradition but then also make it something really unique to our family unit.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I love all of that. So are there any specific celebrations that y'all do? I know, Emily, you were talking about your celebration of learning. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is something that we also have done in our home with my family for many years, where for the last few years we've done 6 weeks of more intentional instructional learning, restful still, but it's more rigorous perhaps during those weeks. And then we always take a week off for celebration and just reflection. And so this is something I really wanted to incorporate into our community, also being new, like trying to think, what do I value and how do I want to bring that into like the groundwork of what we're building here by God's grace. And so what that last week of our term is for us to pause and to look back over all we've learned, to look at the things that are going well and rejoice in those, but then also have some space to assess like maybe some things aren't going well and not to like get to the end of the year before we make a change. So like be honest with one another about that. But one of the things that we've done is we've actually had a gathering where all of the families get together. We get dressed up, like some of the boys even had little like jackets on and the whole works. parks, and we've had pretty intense restrictions here because of COVID. So it's had to be outdoors. We've had to be at socially distanced tables, one family per table. I wanted to have food because I just felt like that's part of the feastness of it. So trying to figure out how to do that with like individually packed stuff. But we've made it work, and the children have brought their artwork and different things they've worked on. We displayed them from trees.
Oh, that's lovely.
And they would come up and they would choose one thing that they really loved learning about from the last 6 weeks, and they spent a little bit time in that rest week preparing something, and they would share. So it was just a time for us to like really relish and delight in the wins that we've had as a community, and just to let the stories and the poems and the places that we visited together really sink into our hearts, and to invite our dads that are not usually a part of that to witness and just to feel a part of the community in a real way. And in our non-local families, we've actually had FaceTime cell phones all over, so they're watching, and then they've sent me videos that I've downloaded and played for their presentations. So it's been a real lesson in adapting and in overcoming and trying to figure out how to celebrate when we're like not able to in the same way.
Well, you are very active. I admire that, because we have not had as many restrictions, and so we've been able to get together, and yeah, it's so much easier to celebrate that way.
Yes. I mean, our last celebration of learning, actually, we were planning, we just had one last weekend. We were planning on meeting in person, and it just got so complicated with all the regulations changed right before it, and so we ended up doing it entirely online. And I was like so worried that it was going to lose. I mean, it's better to be in person for sure, but it's still, what we ended up doing is we were able to invite grandparents from all over the country to join. So it ended up being this really neat special thing within itself, even though it wasn't what we had originally thought. But the children did great, and they're used to presenting on the computer, so that went okay too. And so we were still able to be together and to celebrate.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is, I know, an encouragement to those who are under restrictions. We, like Molly, we're not really, there's not a whole lot of restrictions, and we're a very small community. So it's been definitely a blessing not to have to arrange through all of those hoops.
Yes.
But it's also encouraging to hear how you're doing that online, because I know that that'll be important to a lot of communities that are having to and being forced to meet online, and then those who are primarily based online, how they can foster community. Although, even though that they're separate. So thank you both so much for being here today. And I have a little quote that ties so well into the point that y'all both made about how important it is for them to make it their own. And it is from Antonin Sertolanger, his book, The Intellectual Life. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but
I'm reading it right now.
Oh, it's so good. So the quote is, "When we want to awaken a thought in anyone, what are the means at our disposal? One only, to produce in him by word and sign states of sensibility and of imagination, emotion and memory, in which he will discover our idea and make it his own." So that is our wish for our families and our students, right? For them to take these things, the daily traditions and the seasonal traditions, and make it their own. So
yeah, sure.
So thank you both so very much. Are there any closing thoughts that you wanted to leave us with?
I would just say, whatever you can do together, that including kids in the planning a lot of times will make it so much richer too, because that is a way of them making it their own. And I have found, especially with our junior high and high school kids, that they love doing that, and they come up with the greatest ideas that we moms might not ever think of. And so there's a lot of resources within your the kids in your community to create traditions. So
That is so true. I love that. I love
And
that.
isn't that the beauty of the classical model, to
Yeah.
model that for them, and then for them to take it to the next level and make it their own, and take it to the next stage of
Yeah.
all that. So that's really beautiful. I love that.
I do too. I do too. And then, a lot of times, the younger kids are more receptive when it is not coming from us.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is the best idea ever. I said that yesterday, but that's okay. So, that is a great, great point, Molly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. And thank you all out there who are watching us and taking the time to watch us, and have a wonderful day, wonderful season of feasting and fasting and celebrating. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.